When two lost souls cry out in the rain, destiny answers through a discarded phone. A billionaire CEO receives an impossible call from children he's never met, speaking words that will shatter everything he thought he knew about his life. This is a story about second chances, hidden truths, and the mysterious ways the universe brings broken pieces together. Before we begin this incredible journey, type love in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. The rain hammered against the windshield of the black Mercedes as Christopher Ashford gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. His jaw clenched so tight, it ached. The board meeting had been a disaster. 3 years of work, gone. His supposed partners had voted against him, sided with his competitor, stolen his project right from under his nose. Traitors, he muttered, voice dripping with venom. Every single one of them. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. Another message from his assistant, another problem demanding his attention. Something inside him snapped. Christopher snatched the phone, rolled down the window, and hurled it with all his strength into the darkness. He didn't even look where it landed. Somewhere in that godforsaken dump on the edge of the industrial district, probably. Good riddance. The rain intensified as he sped away, not knowing that his moment of rage had just set in motion something extraordinary, something that would change everything. Miles away, in a part of town Christopher Ashford had never visited and never would, two small figures huddled together in the pouring rain. Lily and Rose Madison, identical twins with golden hair now plastered to their tiny faces, held hands as they stumbled through the darkness. They had gotten separated from their grandmother at the outdoor market when the storm hit suddenly. In their panic to find shelter, they had run in the wrong direction, ending up in the sprawling wasteland of the city dump. "Lily, I'm scared," Rose whimpered, her small voice barely audible over the thunder. At 5 years old, the world seemed enormous and terrifying in the storm. Her pink hoodie, worn and faded, offered little protection against the cold rain. "Me too," Lily admitted, squeezing her sister's hand tighter. "But we need to find somewhere dry. Come on." The twins picked their way carefully through the garbage, their worn sneakers squelching in the mud. The smell was overwhelming, but fear pushed them forward. Lightning flashed, illuminating mountains of trash bags, broken furniture, and discarded dreams. Then Lily saw it, an old, cracked toilet sitting bizarrely upright among the debris. Next to it, a large piece of corrugated metal leaned against some barrels, creating a makeshift shelter. "There," Lily pointed. "We can wait there until Grandma finds us." They scrambled to the spot. Rose, exhausted and shivering, sat down on the toilet seat while Lily found a huge cabbage leaf, probably thrown out from the market. She held it over both their heads like an umbrella. It was pathetic protection, but it was something. The girls huddled close, their small bodies trembling from cold and fear. "I want Grandma," Rose sobbed quietly. "Where is she?" "She's looking for us," Lily said with more confidence than she felt. "She'll find us. She always does." But as the minutes dragged on and the storm showed no signs of stopping, even Lily's brave front began to crack. They were just two little girls, alone and lost in a nightmare landscape of garbage and rain. The darkness pressed in on all sides. Every shadow looked like a monster. Every sound made them jump. Then something vibrated nearby. Both girls froze. "What was that?" Rose whispered. Lily carefully moved some trash bags aside. There, in a designer leather bag half submerged in muddy water, a phone was buzzing and glowing. With trembling fingers, Lily pulled it out. The screen was cracked but still working. She stared at it, then at her sister. "Should we?" Rose asked. "Grandma always says if we're lost, we should call for help," Lily reasoned. Her small fingers fumbled with the device. She didn't know how to use a smartphone, but she pressed buttons until the screen changed. There was a contacts list. Only one name stood out to her innocent eyes, one word she understood and longed for: Daddy. They didn't have a daddy. Their mother had left them with Grandma Martha 2 years ago and never came back, but the word represented safety, protection, someone who would help. Without overthinking it, Lily pressed the name. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a deep, irritated male voice answered. "What? Who is this? How did you get this number?" Lily's voice came out small and scared, but clear. "Daddy, we're lost. We're at the dump in the rain. Please help us. We're so cold." There was absolute silence on the other end, not even breathing. "Daddy!" Lily tried again, tears now streaming down her face. "Please don't be mad. We didn't mean to get lost. Can you come get us?" Christopher Ashford sat frozen in his penthouse apartment, the backup phone he'd just activated pressed to his ear. His mind struggled to process what he'd just heard. A child, a little girl, calling him Daddy, on the phone he'd thrown away less than an hour ago. "This is some kind of sick joke," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. Something about the genuine fear in that small voice cut through his anger. "Who put you up to this?" "Please," Lily begged, and now he could hear another child crying in the background. "We're really scared. The thunder is so loud, and we don't know how to get home. Grandma is going to be so worried." Christopher's analytical mind kicked in. This wasn't a prank. No one knew he'd thrown that phone away. The odds of someone finding it in that specific location and calling him were astronomical. But it had happened. 2 children, apparently lost in the dump, had found his phone and called the only number they saw. Against every logical instinct, something deep in his chest tightened. He thought of those kids, cold and scared in that hellish place. He'd driven past it earlier. It was dangerous, full of sharp metal and unstable piles of trash. At night, in a storm, they could be seriously hurt. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice becoming firm but gentler. "I'm going to come get you, but you need to stay exactly where you are. Don't move around. Can you do that?" "Yes, Daddy," Lily said, relief flooding her voice. Rose stopped crying, hope lighting her face. "I'm not your—" Christopher started, then stopped. It didn't matter right now. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Stay on the line with me. Keep talking so I know you're okay." He was already grabbing his jacket and keys. This was insane. He was a billionaire CEO, and he was about to drive back to a garbage dump in a thunderstorm to rescue 2 children he'd never met. But something, call it fate, call it destiny, call it whatever mystical force governs the universe, was pulling him there with a strength he couldn't resist. As he raced down to his car, Lily's voice in his ear, small and trusting, something ancient and dormant stirred in Christopher's heart. He didn't understand it yet, but his entire world was about to shift on its axis. The phone call was just the beginning. "Tell me your names," he said as he navigated the wet streets, driving faster than he should. "I'm Lily, and this is my sister Rose. We're twins. We're 5 years old." 5 years old. Christopher's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Something about that number resonated in his mind, but he couldn't place why. His thoughts were jumbled, a mess of emotion he wasn't used to feeling. He'd built his empire on cold logic and calculated risks, not impulsive rescues of random children. Yet here he was, driving like a madman through the storm. "We live with our Grandma Martha." Rose had taken the phone now, her voice still shaky. "Mommy left us 2 years ago. Grandma takes care of us." "She's the best grandma in the whole world," Lily added from the background. "She works really hard so we can eat." Christopher felt an unexpected pang. These weren't privileged children playing in a dump for adventure. They were poor kids who'd gotten genuinely lost. Kids whose grandmother was probably beside herself with worry right now. Kids who had no business being out in this weather at all. "Almost there," he said, spotting the entrance to the dump. "Keep talking to me." The place looked even more ominous at night. His expensive car was completely out of place as he navigated the rough paths between trash mountains, his headlights cut through the rain and darkness. "Can you see car lights?" he asked. "Yes!" both girls shouted together. "Wave something so I can see you." A moment later he spotted movement. There, illuminated in his headlights, were two of the smallest, most bedraggled children he'd ever seen. Identical little girls with blonde hair, wearing soaked pink hoodies, sitting on an actual toilet in the middle of a garbage dump, waving a massive cabbage leaf. The absurdity of it hit him, but so did something else, a wave of protectiveness so fierce it nearly knocked the breath from his lungs. He parked and jumped out, not caring that his $1,000 shoes sank into the mud. "Daddy!" Lily cried, and before he could correct her, both girls had launched themselves at him, wrapping their tiny arms around his legs. Christopher stood paralyzed. He didn't do physical affection, he barely tolerated handshakes, but these two tiny humans were clinging to him like he was their salvation, their small bodies shaking with cold and relief. Slowly, awkwardly, he placed his hands on their wet heads. "I've got you," he heard himself say. "You're safe now." And as thunder rolled overhead and rain continued to pour down, Christopher Ashford made a decision that defied everything he thought he knew about himself. He scooped both girls up, one in each arm, and carried them to his car. They weighed almost nothing, their arms wrapped around his neck, trusting and grateful. "We need to find your grandmother," he said, settling them in the back seat and cranking up the heat. "Tell me where you last saw her." But as he looked at their faces in the rear-view mirror, truly seeing them for the first time, something impossible occurred to him. Something that made his blood run cold. Those eyes, that shade of blue, the shape of their faces. He'd seen those features before, in his own mirror, in old photographs of himself as a child. "No," he whispered. "That's impossible." "What's wrong, Daddy?" Rose asked innocently. Christopher's mind raced, 5 years old, the timing, the resemblance. But he didn't have children. He'd never even, except for that one night, 6 years ago, the conference in Chicago, the woman he'd met at the hotel bar. They'd connected intensely, spent one passionate night together, and she'd vanished by morning. He'd never even gotten her full name, just Marie. His chest tightened. Could these children possibly be? No. The odds were astronomical. But looking at their faces, he couldn't unsee the resemblance. Those were his eyes staring back at him. His bone structure, his... "Mister?" Lily's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "Are you okay? You look scared." He forced himself to focus. "I'm fine. Let's find your grandmother. Where do you live?" "In the old apartments on Riverside Street," Lily said. "Building C, apartment 3. Christopher knew the area. Section 8, housing, low income, barely maintained. Of course, that's where they lived. He put the car in gear and drove, but his mind was chaos. He needed answers. He needed to know who these children really were, who their mother was, why they'd been left with their grandmother. But first, he needed to reunite them with the woman who was undoubtedly frantic with worry. The drive took 15 minutes. The girls chatted in the back seat, their fear forgotten now that they felt safe. They told him about Grandma Martha, about their favorite foods, about the stuffed bunny they shared, normal kid things. But nothing could feel normal anymore, not after what he'd seen in their faces, not after the impossible connection he felt to these two small strangers. When they pulled up to the rundown apartment complex, a figure stood in the rain on the sidewalk, holding a broken umbrella and calling out two names over and over. The moment the car stopped, both girls started yelling. "Grandma!" An elderly woman spun around, her weathered face transforming from anguish to pure joy. She rushed to the car as Christopher opened the doors. The girls tumbled out into her arms, and all three collapsed on the sidewalk in a crying, hugging heap. Christopher stood by his car, watching. The grandmother looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. She was probably in her mid-60s, grey-haired, with kind eyes that held a lifetime of hardship. Her clothes were shabby, her hands rough from hard work. But the love in her face, as she held those girls, was worth more than all his billions. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Oh God, thank you. I've been searching everywhere. The police wouldn't come out until morning. I thought... She couldn't finish, just held the girls tighter. Christopher found his voice. "They're okay, cold and scared, but okay. They found a phone and called me." Martha looked at him more closely, her expression changing to confusion. Her eyes widened. She stared at his face, then at the girls, then back at him. Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. You look just like... No, it can't be." "We need to talk," Christopher said quietly. "Inside, now." Something in his tone made her nod. She struggled to her feet, holding both girls' hands. "Come with me, please." As they walked toward the building, Christopher felt like he was moving through a dream, or maybe a nightmare. He'd come to rescue 2 lost children, and somehow found himself standing at the edge of a revelation that would change everything. The universe had orchestrated this moment when he threw that phone away. Every piece had fallen into place with impossible precision. Inside apartment 3, the truth was waiting. The truth. And Christopher Ashford, billionaire CEO who controlled boardrooms and commanded respect from the most powerful people in the world, suddenly felt more terrified than he'd ever been in his life. Because he already knew, deep down, what Martha was about to tell him. He could see it in her shocked face, in the way she kept looking between him and the girls. Those children weren't random strangers who'd found his phone by chance. The universe didn't work that hard for coincidences. As the apartment door closed behind them, sealing them all inside with the truth, Christopher took a deep breath and prepared for his entire world to explode. Martha's apartment was tiny, clean despite its worn condition, and filled with signs of children everywhere. Crayon drawings covered the refrigerator. 2 small beds took up most of the single bedroom visible through an open door. A stack of library books sat on a rickety coffee table. The overhead light flickered slightly, and the whole place smelled faintly of soup and laundry detergent. It was humble, but it was loved. "Sit down," Martha said, her voice shaking. She sent the girls to change into dry clothes, then turned to face Christopher. Her hands trembled as she gestured to a threadbare couch. "I need a minute. I never thought... Oh, Lord." Christopher sat stiffly on the edge of the cushion. His expensive suit was soaked and muddy, completely ruined, but he didn't care. His entire focus was on the woman pacing in front of him, clearly struggling with something massive. "Who was their mother?" he asked directly. No point dancing around it. Martha sank into a chair across from him, suddenly looking every one of her 63 years. Marie Henderson, she was my daughter." Her voice cracked on the word "was." Christopher's stomach dropped. "Was. She died 2 years ago, drug overdose." Martha's eyes filled with fresh tears. She'd been struggling for years, got clean for a while when she got pregnant, but after the girls were born, she spiraled. Eventually left them with me and disappeared into that life. I got the call from the hospital that she was gone 2 months after she left. The pieces were clicking into place, each one hitting Christopher like a physical blow. "How old are the girls?" "They turned 5 last month. October 16th. Christopher did the math. Conceived in January, almost 6 years ago. The Chicago conference had been mid-January. His hands started to shake. "Did Marie ever mention their father?" Martha looked at him steadily, her aged eyes sharp despite her tears. "She told me once, when she was sober enough to have a real conversation. Said she'd met a man at a business conference in Chicago, one night together. She said he was the most remarkable man she'd ever met, but when she woke up he was gone. She never even got his last name, just Christopher." The room spun. Christopher gripped the edge of the couch to steady himself. Why didn't she try to find me? Tell me about the pregnancy. She didn't know how. She didn't even know what company you worked for. And honestly, Martha's voice hardened slightly. She was ashamed. She was a waitress who'd had a one-night stand with a businessman way out of her league. By the time she realized she was pregnant, you were like a dream she'd had, not real anymore. Christopher's throat tightened. I would have, if I'd known I never would have abandoned my own children. I believe you, Martha said softly. I can see it in your face. You didn't know. But Marie, she was broken in so many ways. She couldn't reach out, couldn't ask for help, couldn't even help herself in the end. And the girls emerged from the bedroom in dry clothes, mismatched pajamas that were slightly too small. They climbed onto the couch on either side of Christopher, pressing against him like they'd known him forever. Rose yawned hugely. Lily looked up at him with those blue eyes, his eyes, and smiled. Are you really our daddy? She asked simply. The question hung in the air. Christopher looked at Martha, who nodded slowly. Then he looked at these two small girls who had materialized in his life through the most impossible series of events. His daughters. He had daughters, twin daughters who'd been living in poverty while he lived in a penthouse, completely unaware of their existence. I think I might be, he said carefully. We'll need to do a test to be completely sure, but looking at you both, I think yes. Yes, I am. Lily and Rose looked at each other, then back at him. They didn't seem shocked or upset. If anything, they seemed pleased. Like finding a father in a garbage dump during a thunderstorm was just another strange adventure in their young lives. Does that mean you'll stay? Rose asked hopefully. Grandma says daddies protect their families. Christopher felt something crack open in his chest. These children had nothing. They lived in a tiny apartment with their aging grandmother, who clearly struggled to make ends meet. They wore old clothes and probably went to bed hungry more often than they should. While he'd been building his empire, living in luxury, his own flesh and blood had been suffering. The guilt was crushing. I'll stay, he heard himself promise. I'm going to take care of you, all of you. He looked at Martha. I'm going to make this right. Martha's eyes widened. Mr. Ashford, Christopher, please. Christopher, then. You don't owe us anything. You didn't know. We've managed this long. We can keep... No. His voice was firm but not harsh. You shouldn't have to just manage. These are my daughters, my responsibility. And you raised them when their mother couldn't. You deserve support, not struggle. Tears ran down Martha's weathered cheeks. I don't want your money out of obligation. I want what's best for these girls. So do I, and what's best is for them to know their father, to have opportunities, to not worry about where their next meal comes from. Christopher's voice grew stronger as clarity formed. We'll do a DNA test tomorrow to confirm, but I already know. I can see myself in them. I can feel it. Me too, Martha whispered. The moment I saw you in the rain, I saw Marie's Christopher. She kept a matchbook from that hotel. She'd look at it sometimes when she was sad, remembering the man who'd made her feel special for one night. I saw the name written on it, Christopher Ashford. I just never imagined you were the Christopher Ashford, the billionaire, the one who's always in the business news. Christopher laughed bitterly. I wish she'd known. I wish she'd found a way to tell me. So much could have been different. Can't change the past, Martha said gently, but we can change what happens next. Rose had fallen asleep against Christopher's shoulder, her small body completely trusting. Lily was fighting to keep her eyes open, yawning every few seconds. Christopher found himself gently stroking their hair, a gesture that felt both foreign and completely natural. His daughters, the phrase kept echoing in his mind. His daughters. They need to sleep, Martha said. It's been an overwhelming night for everyone. Christopher should leave. Should go home to his penthouse, process everything, make rational plans, but the thought of leaving them felt wrong, like abandoning them all over again, even though he'd never known they existed. "Can I stay?" The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise Martha. "Just for tonight. I could sleep on the couch." I don't want to leave them yet." Martha studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll get you a blanket. Lord knows this is the strangest day of my life, but I believe you're a good man. Marie thought so too. She said you had kind eyes." As Martha fetched bedding, Christopher carefully shifted Rose to lay on the couch. Lily immediately curled up beside her sister. They looked so peaceful, so innocent. How had his life changed so completely in just a few hours? This morning he'd been furious about a business deal. Tonight he was a father to 2 5-year-old girls he'd never known existed. "Christopher?" Martha returned with a worn quilt. "Thank you. For coming when they called. For staying. For caring. Thank you for raising them," he replied. "For loving them when their mother couldn't. For keeping them safe." After Martha went to her small bedroom, Christopher sat in the dim light of the living room, watching his daughters sleep. His mind raced with plans. DNA test first thing tomorrow. Legal custody arrangements, moving them somewhere better, somewhere safe, getting Martha proper support, making sure the girls had everything they needed, good schools, proper nutrition, medical care, clothes that fit. But beneath all the practical planning, something deeper was happening. Christopher Ashford, who'd built his entire identity around being a self-made man who needed no one, was discovering what it meant to be needed. These 2 small girls had called him Daddy and trusted him completely within minutes of meeting him. They'd wrapped their arms around his neck in that garbage dump like he was their whole world. And something in him that had been frozen for decades was beginning to thaw. He thought about the phone he'd thrown away in rage. If he hadn't lost his temper, if the phone had landed somewhere else, if the girls had gotten lost in a different direction, any tiny change in the chain of events, and this moment never would have happened. The odds of everything aligning exactly right were astronomical. Yet it had happened, like the universe itself had reached down and connected them when logic said it was impossible. "Thank you," Christopher whispered to whatever force had orchestrated this miracle. "I don't know why I deserved this chance, but I won't waste it." As exhaustion finally pulled him toward sleep, his last thought was of tomorrow, of DNA results that would confirm what his heart already knew, of lawyers and courts and custody, of learning how to be a father to 2 children who'd already lived 5 years without him. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. It was the most important thing he'd ever done in his life. In the bedroom, Martha lay awake, her own mind spinning. She'd seen the shock and emotion on Christopher's face when he'd realized the truth. That man had known nothing about the girls until tonight, she was certain, and his immediate response had been to promise protection and care. Maybe, just maybe, these babies would finally have the life they deserved, the life Marie had wanted for them but couldn't provide. Martha closed her eyes and said a prayer of gratitude for Christopher finding them, for the bizarre miracle of a phone thrown in anger landing exactly where desperate children would find it, for second chances and new beginnings, for hope which she hadn't felt much of lately. Tomorrow would bring challenges, questions, complications, but tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Martha felt like her granddaughters might actually be okay. More than okay. They might even be blessed. She drifted to sleep with tears on her cheeks, tears of relief, of hope, of exhaustion, finally giving way to peace. In the living room, Christopher's eyes flew open one more time. A thought had struck him like lightning. The board meeting. The betrayal. He'd been so consumed with rage and loss that he'd driven to that specific spot and thrown his phone with enough force to land exactly where it needed to be. If those partners hadn't betrayed him, he wouldn't have been angry, wouldn't have thrown the phone, wouldn't have been at that intersection at that exact moment. The worst day of his professional life had led directly to the discovery of his daughters. The universe had used his enemy's betrayal to guide him to his children. The symmetry of it was breathtaking. What he'd thought was his greatest loss had actually been his greatest gift. He just hadn't understood it yet. Christopher smiled in the darkness. "Thank you," he whispered again, this time to the partners who'd betrayed him. "You have no idea what you gave me." Sleep finally claimed him, and for the first time in years, Christopher Ashford dreamed of something other than business and success. He dreamed of two small girls with golden hair calling him daddy and holding his hand. He dreamed of a future he'd never imagined wanting, but now couldn't imagine living without. He dreamed of family, and it felt like coming home. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Martha's apartment, casting soft golden light across Christopher's face. He woke slowly, disoriented, his back aching from the too-short couch. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then he heard it, childish giggling and the padding of small feet. "Is he awake yet?" Rose's voice, trying to whisper but failing. "Shh, you'll wake him up." Lily's louder whisper, which definitely would wake anyone up. Christopher kept his eyes closed, listening. More giggling. The sound of something being dragged across the floor. Then he felt it, two small bodies climbing onto the couch, one on each side. Little hands touched his face gently. "Daddy." Rose's voice was so close he could feel her breath. "Are you sleeping or just pretending?" He couldn't help it. His lips twitched into a smile, giving him away. Both girls squealed with delight. "He's awake! He's awake!" Christopher opened his eyes to find two identical faces, inches from his own, grinning ear to ear. His daughters. The word still felt surreal, but also perfectly right. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough from sleep. "We made you breakfast," Lily announced proudly. "Well, Grandma made it, but we helped." The smell of coffee and something sweet wafted from the tiny kitchen. Christopher sat up, and the girls immediately claimed spots on either side of him again, like they were magnetic and he was iron. They fit perfectly under his arms. Martha emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray with coffee, toast, and what looked like scrambled eggs. Her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. "Morning. Figured you'd need sustenance before we figure out what happens next." "Thank you." Christopher accepted the coffee gratefully. His suit from last night was draped over a chair, hopelessly ruined. He was still wearing his dress shirt and pants, wrinkled and stained. In any other context, he'd be mortified to be seen like this. But here, in this moment, it didn't matter at all. "Can we tell you about our room?" Rose bounced excitedly. "We have bunk beds and 17 stuffed animals, and Lily has a collection of pretty rocks." 18 stuffed animals, Lily corrected. "We got a new bunny at the church donation last week, remember?" Christopher's heart twisted. Church donations. His daughters were getting their toys from charity drives, while he owned 3 vacation homes he never used. "I'd love to see your room," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the guilt. The girls dragged him by the hands to their tiny bedroom. It was barely bigger than his walk-in closet back home. The bunk bed took up most of the space, with a small dresser crammed into the corner, but every inch was decorated with childish artwork, hand-drawn pictures taped to the walls, and yes, a collection of rocks arranged carefully on the windowsill. "That's the prettiest one," Lily said, pointing to a smooth grey stone. "I found it by the river. See how it has sparkles?" Christopher picked it up, examining it like it was a rare gemstone. "It's beautiful. You have a good eye." "Daddy," Rose tugged his sleeve, "do you have a big house?" "I do," he admitted. "Does it have a yard?" Her eyes were huge, hopeful. "Yes, a yard and a garden." And actually, he had a rooftop terrace garden that he paid someone to maintain. He couldn't remember the last time he'd actually spent time there. Can we see it sometime? Lily asked shyly. Grandma says we can't ask people for things, but you're our daddy now, so maybe it's okay? Christopher knelt down to their level, looking both girls in the eyes. You can ask me for anything, always. And yes, you can see my house. You can do more than see it. You can live there if you want. Both girls gasped. Really? They said in unison. Really? But we need to talk about it with Grandma first, okay? Lots of grown-up things to figure out. They nodded solemnly, as if understanding that big changes were coming. Then Lily hugged him suddenly, fiercely. I'm glad you're our daddy, even if you didn't know about us before. I'm glad you know now. Christopher's throat tightened. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. And back in the living room, Martha had her phone out. I called my friend, who's a nurse. She says we can go to the clinic today for a paternity test. They can do a simple cheek swab, and we'll have results in a few days. I can make some calls, get it expedited, Christopher said. I know people who— No. Martha's voice was firm but not unkind. We do this right. Legal and proper. No special treatment, no pulling strings. If you're going to be in these girls' lives, it needs to be on solid ground, not because you've got money and connections. Christopher paused, then nodded slowly. She was right. This wasn't a business deal to be rushed through with power moves. This was about two children and doing right by them. You're right. We do it proper. Good. Martha's shoulders relaxed slightly. Now, about living arrangements. The girls are settled here. They know this neighborhood, their friends, their routine. I'm not saying they can't spend time with you, but uprooting them completely right away would be traumatic, Christopher finished. I understand. What if we transition slowly? I could come here regularly, spend time with them, let them get to know me. Then visits to my place, build trust before any big changes. That's more sensible than I expected from a billionaire, Martha said with a small smile. Thought you'd want to swoop in and take over. I considered it, Christopher admitted honestly, but these are people, not a company acquisition. And you've been their primary caregiver. I'm not trying to replace you. I'm trying to join what you've built. Martha's eyes welled up. Marie would have liked you, you know, the real you, not just the one-night version. You're a good man. Before Christopher could respond, his cell phone, the backup one, rang. His assistant, James, calling from the office. Reality came crashing back. He had a company to run, meetings scheduled, a whole life that existed outside this tiny apartment. I need to take this, he said apologetically. Give me 1 minute. He stepped into the hallway. James, what is it? Sir, the board is demanding a meeting. They want to discuss the vote yesterday and cancel everything for today, Christopher interrupted. Actually cancel the rest of the week. I have a personal emergency. A personal emergency? James sounded shocked. Christopher Ashford didn't have personal emergencies. He didn't even take sick days. Sir, are you all right? Do you need— I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I just discovered I have 2 daughters I didn't know existed, and they're more important than any board meeting. Clear my schedule. Dead silence on the other end. Then, did you just say daughters? Yes, I'll explain later. Just handle it, James. You're good at that. Of course, sir. And congratulations, I think. Christopher hung up and returned to the apartment. The girls were showing Martha a picture they'd drawn, 2 stick figures labeled Lily and Rose, holding hands with a tall stick figure labeled Daddy. The simple crayon drawing hit Christopher harder than any corporate achievement ever had. That's beautiful, he said, voice thick with emotion. Can I keep it? Yes, both girls chorused. Lily carefully removed it from the table and handed it to him like it was made of glass. Put it somewhere special. I will, on my desk at work, where I can see it every day. The morning passed in a blur of ordinary activities that felt extraordinary. They went to the clinic for the paternity test, just a quick swab, painless and fast. They had lunch at a diner, where the girls ordered grilled cheese and chocolate milk, and Christopher found himself enjoying a simple meal more than the five-star restaurants he usually frequented. They visited a nearby park, where he pushed them on the swings and caught them at the bottom of the slide. Every moment revealed something new about his daughters. Lily was cautious and thoughtful, always checking on her sister. Rose was bolder, more likely to try new things. Both were smart, curious, and kind to other children at the playground. They'd been raised well despite their circumstances. Martha had done an incredible job with limited resources. As the afternoon wore on, reality continued to intrude. Christopher knew he had to go home eventually, deal with work, start making concrete plans, but leaving felt impossible. The girls had attached themselves to him with startling speed, like they'd been waiting for him their whole lives. Which he supposed they had been. "I have to go soon," he told them, as they sat on a park bench sharing a bag of pretzels. "But I'll be back tomorrow, and the day after. Every day until we figure out what's best." "Promise?" Rose asked, her eyes fearful. "You won't disappear like Mommy did?" The question gutted him. "I promise. I will never abandon you. Never." He looked at Martha. "Give me your phone number. I'll call tonight before bed, and I'll be here tomorrow morning." "We could call you," Lily suggested. "Like we did last night, when you were Daddy in the phone." Christopher smiled. "I have a better idea." He pulled out his phone and took a selfie with both girls. Then he opened his contacts and created a new entry. "See, now you're in my phone officially. Lily and Rose, my daughters. And I'm putting myself in Grandma's phone as—" He looked at Martha questioningly. "Christopher Ashford, the girl's father," she said firmly. "No confusion about who you are and why you're calling." As the sun began to set, Christopher finally, reluctantly prepared to leave. The girls clung to him at the apartment door, making him promise at least 10 more times that he'd come back. Martha walked him down to his car, which looked absurdly out of place in this neighborhood. "This is going to change their lives," she said quietly. "I hope you understand how much. Once the media finds out Christopher Ashford has twin daughters, there'll be no going back to normal." "I know. We'll need security, privacy protections. I'll hire the best." Christopher ran a hand through his hair. "But they deserve better than this, Martha. You deserve better. You shouldn't have to work 2 jobs to barely scrape by. Let me help." "We'll talk about it," she said carefully. "After the test results. After everything's legal and official. I won't take charity, but if you're really their father, then yes, help would be welcome. For them, not for me." "For all of you," Christopher insisted. "You're a package deal. They love you, depend on you. I'm not trying to separate them from you." Martha's tough exterior cracked, showing vulnerability. "I was so scared when they got lost last night. I thought I'd failed Marie, failed them. I've been barely holding it together for 2 years, and I was terrified it wasn't enough. Then you showed up, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd be okay." "You'll be more than okay," Christopher promised. "All of you. I'll make sure of it." As he drove away, Christopher watched the building disappear in his rearview mirror. Inside apartment 3C, 3 people who'd become his whole world in less than 24 hours were probably getting ready for bed. Simple routines, simple lives, but filled with a love he'd never experienced in his luxury penthouse. His phone rang. It was Richard, his lawyer and oldest friend. "Christopher, what the hell is going on?" "Your assistant says you've cancelled everything and discovered you have daughters. Is this a breakdown? Do I need to come over?" "It's real," Christopher said. "I met a woman 6 years ago. One night. She got pregnant, never told me, and died 2 years ago. Her mother has been raising the girls. I just found them yesterday because they called me from a phone I'd thrown away in anger." Silence. Then, "That's the most insane story I've ever heard." "I know, but it's true. We did a paternity test today. Should have results in a few days, but Richard, I know they're mine. I can see it in their faces. I can feel it. Okay. Richard's voice shifted to lawyer mode. We need to handle this carefully. Custody arrangements, financial support, media management. We should file for legal paternity as soon as we have those results. Already thinking ahead, but Richard, this isn't a hostile situation. The grandmother isn't fighting me. She wants what's best for the girls, same as I do. That's good. Rare, but good. Still, we do everything legally airtight. No room for problems later. They talked for another 20 minutes, making plans, discussing strategy. When Christopher finally hung up, he was pulling into his building's garage. The penthouse awaited. Cold, empty, perfect. Everything in its place. No crayon drawings on the walls, no stuffed animals, no laughter. For the first time in his life, Christopher Ashford walked into his home and felt lonely. He had everything money could buy, but it all seemed meaningless compared to a grilled cheese sandwich with two 5-year-old girls in a diner booth. He looked at the drawing they'd made him, carefully placed in his briefcase. 2 children holding hands with their father, drawn in crayon, probably worth nothing to anyone but him, and yet it was the most precious thing he owned. His phone buzzed. A text from Martha. Girls are in bed. They wanted to say goodnight but were too shy to call. They said to tell you they love you. I think they mean it. Christopher stared at those words. They said to tell you they love you. 3 people had told him they loved him his entire adult life. All of them were business associates or brief romantic partners who didn't really mean it. But these 2 children, after one day, loved him. Simply, completely, without reservation. Because he was their father, because he'd shown up, because he'd promised to stay. He typed back, "Tell them I love them too, and I mean it. See you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp." Then he sat in his enormous living room surrounded by expensive furniture and art worth millions, and cried. Not sad tears, not happy tears, something in between. Tears for the years he'd missed, tears for Marie, who'd raised his daughters alone and then lost her battle with demons he'd never known about. Tears for Martha, who'd stepped in when her daughter couldn't. Tears for 2 little girls who'd spent 5 years without a father and now clung to him like he'd always been there. But mostly tears of gratitude for the universe's impossible timing, for the phone that had traveled exactly where it needed to go, for 2 brave children who'd called a stranger daddy and trusted him to save them. For the chance to be more than just a successful businessman, the chance to be a father, the chance to matter to someone in a way that had nothing to do with money or power or prestige. Christopher Ashford cried until he had no tears left. Then he got up, walked to his home office, and pinned that crayon drawing above his desk. Right where he'd see it every single day, a reminder of what was truly important, of the family he'd found in the most impossible circumstances, of the life that was waiting for him, if he was brave enough to embrace it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more revelations, complications he couldn't yet imagine. But tonight, Christopher went to bed with a smile on his face and hope in his heart. For the first time in decades, he had something worth more than his entire empire. He had daughters who called him Daddy, and nothing would ever be the same again. Outside, rain began to fall again, gentle this time, a cleansing rain, a new beginning. And in an apartment across town, 2 little girls slept peacefully, dreaming of the father who'd found them in the garbage dump and promised never to leave. Dreams that, against all odds, were finally coming true. 3 days later, Christopher stared at the DNA test results. Probability of paternity, 99%. He was officially a father. Richard arrived with Marcus Webb, a family law specialist. Given that the grandmother isn't contesting, you have a strong position for custody. Marcus explained. "I'd recommend joint custody, keeping Martha involved while establishing your parental rights." "Exactly what I want," Christopher said. "The girls need her." "No, we can finalize everything in 2 to 3 months. I'll also set up trust funds and support for immediate needs," Richard added. "What about their living situation?" Christopher asked. Marcus warned, "Moving them too fast could look like you're using wealth to control things. Support their current situation first, then discuss changes together." As Christopher nodded, fighting his CEO instincts. "Think like a father, not a businessman. Got it." Christopher called Martha immediately. "I got the results." "So did I. I'm relieved. Now we can move forward properly." "Marcus says we can start weekend visits. The girls could stay with me, starting this weekend." Martha agreed. "They've been packing their stuffed animals twice already. But Christopher, Rose has nightmares sometimes, and Lily won't eat vegetables unless write it all down. I'll follow your instructions exactly." By Friday, Christopher had transformed 2 guest rooms into child-friendly spaces. Designer Patricia had created warm, safe environments with soft colors, age-appropriate furniture, and nightlights in each room. Saturday morning, Christopher picked up the girls with their worn backpacks. Martha handed him her detailed list, fighting tears as she hugged them goodbye. The penthouse amazed them. When Christopher showed them their new rooms, Rose ran into the purple one, spinning in circles, while Lily climbed into the yellow room's reading nook. "These are ours," Rose breathed. "Really ours. Really yours." Lily was crying. "It's just so pretty. I never had anything this pretty before." Christopher held her close. "You deserve pretty things. You deserve everything." They spent the afternoon exploring the rooftop garden, making messy sandwiches together, playing games, watching movies. Bath time turned into a splash war. Bedtime took twice as long because they couldn't stop getting distracted. Christopher read 3 stories, doing character voices that made them giggle. By the last page, both girls were asleep in Lily's bed, still holding hands. He called Martha. "They're asleep. Everything went perfectly. Thank God. I've been worried sick. They're wonderful, Martha. You did an amazing job raising them." That night, Rose woke from a nightmare. Christopher stayed with her until she fell back asleep, waking hours later with both girls staring at him. "Morning, Daddy," they said in unison, giggling. The weekend flew by. Pancakes, garden play, video calls with Martha, dance parties, more movies. Sunday evening, driving them back, Christopher felt unexpected sadness. Then Richard called. "Someone leaked to the press. TMZ is running the story tomorrow with photos." Christopher's blood ran cold. "How bad?" "Sympathetic angle, but it'll explode. Every outlet will pick it up. You need to get ahead of it with a controlled interview." Not without Martha's approval. They arranged an interview with the New York Times. The article hit Tuesday with a tasteful headline, "A Father Found: The Extraordinary Story of Christopher Ashford and His Twin Daughters." By noon, every major outlet had picked it up. Christopher's board called an emergency meeting, but he shut down their concerns immediately. "My personal life doesn't affect my ability to run this company. If you disagree, I'm happy to resign." The board backed down, with Marcus Thornton adding, "It's about time you became human, Christopher." But when Christopher arrived at Martha's apartment for dinner, a news van was parked outside, with reporters stationed at the entrance. "There's press outside your building," he told Martha on the phone. "I know. They've been knocking for an hour. Pack bags for a few weeks. You're all coming to stay with me until this dies down." Within the hour, they were settled in his penthouse. Days passed, and temporary started feeling permanent. Martha cooked, the girls' artwork spread everywhere, toys appeared in every room. The sterile showcase transformed into an actual home. A week after moving in, Martha found Christopher in his study late one night, working on custody documents. "Can't sleep?" she asked, settling into the chair across from him. "Too much on my mind. Marcus filed the formal custody paperwork today. Should be approved within a month since you're not contesting it." "Why would I contest it? You're their father. You love them. They need you." Christopher set down his pen. "Martha, we need to talk about long-term arrangements. I don't want you to feel like I'm pushing you out or taking over." "I know you don't, but Christopher, be realistic. This penthouse, your life, there's no room for an old woman in the picture permanently." "That's not true. There's plenty of room. The girls need you. I need you." He paused. "You taught me everything I know about taking care of them. You're family now." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "You're a good man. Better than I expected when this all started. I'm trying, but I couldn't do this without you, so please stay. As long as you want, make this your home too." "My lease is up next month anyway," Martha admitted. "The landlord was raising the rent again. I couldn't afford it much longer. I've been terrified of what would happen, where we'd go." "Then don't go anywhere. Stay here. Help me raise these girls properly. They deserve both of us." Martha nodded, wiping her eyes. "Okay, but I'm not a freeloader. I'll help with the house, the cooking, the girls. I'll earn my keep." "This isn't about earning anything, Martha. You're not staff. You're grandma. You're family." Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Christopher adjusted his work schedule, coming home by 6 every evening. Martha handled morning routines while he was at the office. They had family dinners together. Bedtime became a joint effort, with Christopher reading stories while Martha tucked them in. The girls thrived. They enrolled in an excellent private school nearby, starting late in the year, but adapting quickly. Their teacher reported they were bright, social, and surprisingly well-adjusted, given their recent upheaval. Christopher and Martha attended parent-teacher conferences together, presenting a united front of caregivers who adored these children. But something was still nagging at Christopher, a piece of the puzzle that didn't quite fit. One evening, after the girls were asleep, he finally asked Martha the question that had been bothering him. "Tell me about Marie. Really tell me. Not the sanitized version for the girls' sake." Martha sighed deeply. "What do you want to know? Why did she fall apart after having them? Postpartum depression, or something deeper?" "Deeper," Martha said quietly. "Marie was always fragile, had been since she was young. She tried so hard to be strong, to be normal, but she had demons. When she got pregnant, she was thrilled, thought having babies would fix her, give her purpose. And for a while it did. She was clean, focused, happy. But then they were born, and reality hit. 2 babies are hard. Being a single mother is hard. She had no support system except me, and I was working constantly to pay bills. She started using again when the girls were 6 months old. By their first birthday, she was gone more than she was home." Christopher's chest tightened. "Did she hurt them?" "Never physically, but emotionally. She'd promise to be there and then disappear, would show up high, scaring them. It broke my heart, but I couldn't stop her. Finally, she left them with me and never came back. I got the call 2 months later that she'd overdosed in a motel room across town. Did the girls know her, remember her?" "Barely. They were 3 when she left. They remember a pretty lady who smelled nice sometimes and was scary other times. I've shown them pictures, told them their mommy loved them but was sick. They seem okay with it." Christopher processed this. Why didn't she tell me about the pregnancy? Even if she didn't know my last name, she could have found me if she'd tried. Martha hesitated. "Because she saw something in you that terrified her." "What?" "She told me once, when she was clear-headed. She said you were extraordinary. Brilliant, successful, clearly important. And she was just a waitress with a drug problem and no education. She said, Telling you would have been cruel. Either you'd have rejected her and the babies, which would destroy her, or you'd have felt obligated to help out of pity, which would destroy your life. So she chose to carry the burden alone. "Ah, that's insane," Christopher said hoarsely. "I would have helped. I would have been there." "Would you? Really?" Martha's gaze was sharp. "Be honest. 6 years ago, before you knew them, before you loved them, if some woman you barely remembered showed up claiming to be pregnant with your twins, would you have believed her? Or would you have thought she was after your money?" Christopher wanted to protest, but he couldn't. 6 years ago, he'd been colder, more cynical. His first instinct probably would have been suspicion. Marie hadn't been wrong about that. "She protected you from a situation you weren't ready for," Martha continued. "And in doing so, she protected the girls from a father who might have resented them. Maybe it worked out the way it was supposed to. Maybe you needed to meet them as children, not as a pregnancy. Maybe you needed to fall in love with them naturally. Or maybe we all lost 5 years we can never get back." "Or that," Martha conceded. "We'll never know." They sat in silence for a while. Then Martha spoke again. "There's something else. Something I've been debating whether to tell you." Christopher's pulse quickened. "What?" Martha stood, retrieving her purse from where it hung by the door. She pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. "Marie left this with me. Made me promise to give it to the girl's father if he ever appeared. I guess that time is now." Christopher took the envelope with trembling hands. His name was written on it in unfamiliar handwriting. "Christopher." He opened it carefully, unfolding a single page of notebook paper. "Christopher, if you're reading this, it means you found our daughters. I don't know how or when or why, but I have to believe the universe would bring you together eventually. That's the only thing that's kept me going, knowing that even if I fail them, you won't. I should have told you about them, I know that now. But I was scared and ashamed, and so sure I'd ruin your life the way I've ruined mine. By the time I realized I was wrong, I'd made so many mistakes that telling you felt impossible. Our daughters are beautiful. They have your eyes, your intelligence, your strength. Everything good in them comes from you. Everything broken comes from me. Please don't let them turn out like me. Please give them the life I can't. I'm sorry I'm too weak to be what they need. I'm sorry I'm leaving them with my mother, who deserves better than cleaning up my messes. I'm sorry I wasted the one perfect night of my life by not being brave enough to fight for something real. Love them. Please love them like I wish I was strong enough to love them. They deserve everything, and you can give them that. Be the father I wish I'd had. Be the parent I couldn't be. I wish I'd been brave enough to choose you, to choose them, to choose life. But I'm too tired now, and the darkness is too strong. At least I can die knowing they have a chance, if you find them, if you love them. Please love them, Marie." Christopher's hands shook. Tears blurred his vision. This wasn't a letter from a woman who died of accidental overdose. This was a goodbye letter, a suicide note hidden as hope. "Martha," he said hoarsely, "did Marie kill herself?" Martha's face crumpled. "I don't know. The coroner said accidental overdose, but I've always wondered. She'd been clean for 3 weeks before it happened. Then suddenly she took enough drugs to kill 3 people. Was it an accident because her tolerance was down, or was it intentional? This letter suggests intentional. I know. But I'll never be certain, and maybe that's a mercy." Martha wiped her eyes. "I debated whether to show you that, whether it would help or hurt, but you deserve to know the truth, all of it." Christopher read the letter again, seeing between the lines. Marie had been broken, yes, but she'd loved their daughters. She'd loved them enough to remove herself from their lives when she couldn't be what they needed. It was tragic and heartbreaking, and somehow noble in its own terrible way. "She was wrong about one thing," he said finally. "Everything good in them doesn't come from me. They're kind because you raise them with kindness. They're resilient because you taught them to keep going. They're loving because you loved them every single day. Don't diminish your role in who they are." Martha smiled through tears. "We both shaped them. Marie gave them life, I gave them stability, and you'll give them opportunities. Maybe that's how it was meant to be, all of us contributing to their story." Christopher folded the letter carefully and put it in his desk drawer. Someday, when Lily and Rose were older, he'd share it with them. They deserved to know their mother had loved them, even if she hadn't been able to show it the way they needed. But for now, his focus was on the present, on 2 5-year-old girls sleeping peacefully down the hall, on building a life that honored Marie's sacrifice by being everything she'd hoped for them, on proving that even the darkest circumstances could lead to light, if you were willing to see it. The next morning, Christopher woke to giggling outside his bedroom door. He smiled, knowing what was coming. 3, 2, 1. Both girls burst through the door and jumped on his bed, still in pajamas, hair wild from sleep. "Daddy! Daddy! Wake up! We made you breakfast!" With Grandma's help, Lily clarified. "We're not allowed to use the stove by ourselves yet." Christopher sat up, letting them drag him to the kitchen where Martha had indeed supervised the creation of scrambled eggs, slightly burned, toast, definitely burned, and orange juice, mostly in the glasses. It was a disaster by culinary standards, and absolutely perfect by every other measure. "This is the best breakfast I've ever had," Christopher declared, taking a bite of charred toast. "You girls are amazing chefs." They beamed with pride, chattering about their plans for the day. School, then playground, then maybe they could bake cookies. And could they please have a sleepover with their new friends from school sometime? Christopher looked at Martha over their heads. She was smiling, relaxed in a way she hadn't been when they first met. The stress lines around her eyes had softened. She looked like she was finally able to breathe. This was family. Messy, imperfect, assembled from broken pieces and impossible circumstances, but real, authentic, full of love. "Whatever you want," Christopher told his daughters, "we'll make it happen." Because that's what he did now. He made his daughters' dreams come true. It was a far better use of his wealth and power than any business deal had ever been. And as they sat around the table eating burned food and laughing at silly jokes, Christopher Ashford finally understood what success really meant. It wasn't money or status or corporate victories. It was this moment, right here. 2 girls who called him Daddy, a grandmother who trusted him with her most precious gifts. A family built from chaos and love and the universe's impossible timing. He'd thrown a phone away in anger and found everything he'd been missing his entire life. And he'd never stopped being grateful for that one moment of rage that had changed absolutely everything. 3 months later, the custody paperwork was finalized. Christopher stood in the courthouse hallway, holding 2 sets of legal documents that officially named him as Lily and Rose's father with full legal custody, jointly shared with their grandmother, Martha Henderson. The judge had been moved by their story, commenting that it was rare to see such cooperation and genuine care in custody cases. "Congratulations," Marcus Webb said, shaking Christopher's hand. "This is now officially legal in every way that matters." Christopher looked at Martha, who was crying happy tears while the girls clung to her legs, not quite understanding why everyone was so emotional, but feeding off the positive energy anyway. "We did it," Christopher said. "They're protected now. Official." "They always were," Martha replied. "The paperwork just makes it formal." Back at the penthouse, which Martha and the girls now called home without any qualifiers, there was a celebration planned. Christopher had invited a small group, Richard and his wife, Patricia the designer, James from work, who'd become surprisingly invested in the girls' well-being, and a few of the girls' new friends from school with their parents. The penthouse, Once a sterile bachelor pad, now looked like an actual home where children lived. The white furniture had been replaced with family-friendly pieces. The expensive art was still on the walls, but now shared space with crayon drawings and handprint paintings. The formal dining room had become a homework station. The pristine kitchen was perpetually messy, with evidence of Martha's cooking and the girls' baking experiments. "Speech," Richard called out as everyone gathered. "Come on, Christopher. Tell us how it feels to officially be a dad." Christopher picked up both girls, one in each arm. They were getting heavier, growing so fast, and looked around at the assembled group. 6 months ago, I threw a phone away in anger and thought my life was falling apart. I had no idea the universe was actually putting it together. These two incredible humans called me from a garbage dump and changed everything. Being their father is the greatest privilege of my life, and I promise them, and all of you, that I will never stop trying to be worthy of that title. Everyone applauded. The girls squirmed down and ran off to play with their friends. Adults clustered in conversation groups, and Christopher found himself talking with some of the other parents from school. "Your daughters are delightful," said Monica, mother of Lily's best friend Emma. "Emma talks about Lily constantly. They're inseparable." "I'm glad they found each other," Christopher said. "Moving them mid-year was hard. I worried they wouldn't adjust. Kids are resilient, and you're doing a great job, single father and all." "Not single," Christopher corrected. "Martha's as much their parent as I am, and honestly, I couldn't do it without her." Monica smiled. "That's clear. The way you two co-parent is really something. My ex-husband and I can barely be in the same room." Christopher glanced across the room where Martha was chatting with Patricia, laughing at something. She'd flourished in the past 3 months. Stress had melted away. She'd started taking art classes, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for. She'd made friends in the building. She'd found joy again after years of just surviving. Later, after guests had left and the girls were in bed, Christopher and Martha sat on the terrace under the stars, drinking tea and enjoying the peace. "I need to tell you something," Martha said. "I've been thinking about this for a while." Christopher's stomach dropped. "You're leaving." "What? No. God, no. This is my home now. Those girls are my whole world." She laughed. "No, I wanted to talk about the future, long-term planning." "Okay, I'm 63. Healthy now, but I won't be young forever. The girls will need you to be their primary parent eventually. Not now, not soon, but someday. I want to make sure we have plans in place for when that time comes." Christopher felt uncomfortable discussing Martha's mortality. "Let's not talk about this now. We have to. I'm not being morbid, just practical. You need to be prepared to be a solo parent. Not now, but eventually. Which means you need to think about your own life too. My life is fine." "Is it?" Martha gave him a pointed look. "You work, you parent, but what about you? When's the last time you went on a date, had adult time? Thought about building a life beyond just being a father? I don't need that. The girls are enough, for now. But Christopher, you're 42 years old. You deserve love, partnership, romance, a complete life. The girls need to see that model too, healthy adult relationships." Christopher was quiet. He hadn't thought about dating. Hadn't had time or energy or interest. His days were consumed with work and family. The idea of adding a relationship seemed exhausting and unnecessary. "Just think about it," Martha pressed gently. "I'm not saying rush out and get married, but be open to the possibility. You're a good man. You deserve happiness beyond just parenting." Over the next few weeks, Martha's words lingered. Christopher found himself noticing things he'd ignored before. The attractive woman who smiled at him at school pickup. The colleague who'd mentioned getting coffee sometime. The possibilities that existed if he chose to see them. But every time he considered it, he felt guilty. Like dating would take time and energy away from his daughters. They'd already lost 5 years with him. How could he choose to spend time with someone else instead of them? The answer came from an unexpected source, Lily herself. They were having their nightly talk before bed, just the two of them, when she suddenly asked, "Daddy, why don't you have a girlfriend?" Christopher froze. "What? Where did that come from?" "Emma's mom said you're a catch. I asked Grandma what that means, and she said it means someone girls would want to date, so why don't you?" I'm busy. I have you and Rose. I don't need anyone else." Lily frowned. "But in movies, the daddy usually has someone to love. Don't you want that?" Christopher chose his words carefully. "Would it bother you if I dated someone? Would they be nice to us?" "Of course. I'd never bring someone around who wasn't kind to you." "Then I think it's okay. Rose and I talked about it. We decided you should have someone to make you happy like Grandma makes us happy." Christopher's heart swelled. His 5-year-old daughters were giving him permission to have a life, encouraging it even. "You two are pretty wise for kindergartners." "We know," Lily grinned. "So will you try, please?" "Emma's mom says she has a friend who's really nice and pretty and likes kids." "Emma's mom is setting me up." "Maybe. Is that okay?" Christopher laughed. He was being peer-pressured by 5-year-olds and their matchmaking mothers. "Tell you what, I'll think about it. But no promises." "Yay!" Lily hugged him. "You're the best daddy ever." After she fell asleep, Christopher sat thinking. Maybe Martha and Lily were right. Maybe he'd been so focused on making up for lost time that he'd forgotten he was allowed to have a life beyond parenting. The girls were happy, thriving, secure. Adding a relationship to the mix wouldn't diminish that. It might even enhance it, showing them what healthy adult love looked like. He made a decision. He'd try, slowly, carefully, with the girls' well-being always as the priority. But he'd be open to the possibility that his family could expand in new ways while keeping the core, his daughters, safe and central. A month later, Christopher found himself on his first date in over a year. Emma's mother had indeed set him up with her friend Lauren, a teacher with a warm smile and easy laugh. They had dinner at a quiet restaurant while Martha stayed home with the girls. It went well. Lauren was kind, interesting, and genuinely interested in hearing about his daughters. When he showed her photos on his phone, she didn't seem annoyed or bored. She asked questions, laughed at their antics, commented on how beautiful they were. "You're really close with them," Lauren observed. "That's rare for fathers, especially ones who only recently came into their kids' lives. They're not just my kids, they're my whole world. Everything I do is for them." "That's obvious. It's really attractive, actually, the way your face lights up when you talk about them." The date ended with plans for another one. Nothing rushed, nothing intense, just the beginning of something that might become real if they gave it time and space to grow naturally. When Christopher got home, Martha was reading in the living room. She looked up with raised eyebrows. "Well?" "It was nice, really nice. We're going to see each other again." "Good. You deserve nice." Christopher sat down beside her. "Thank you for pushing me, for reminding me that being a father doesn't mean giving up everything else. Being a parent means showing your kids how to live a full life. They need to see you as a complete person, not just their father. You're teaching them every day how to be in the world. Make sure you're teaching them to pursue happiness, not just duty." Over the next 2 months, Christopher dated Lauren carefully, integrating it slowly into his life without disrupting the girls' routine. Lauren met Lily and Rose for the first time at a park, casually, with no pressure. The girls were cautious at first, but warmed up when Lauren knew all about their favorite cartoon characters and played tag with genuine enthusiasm. "She's nice," Rose declared after. "Can she come to my birthday party?" "We'll see," Christopher hedged, but he was pleased. The girls' approval mattered more than anything else. Rose's 6th birthday approached. Both girls had birthdays in mid-October, just 2 weeks apart, and Christopher went all out. He'd missed 5 birthdays. These would be spectacular. He rented a venue, hired entertainers, invited every child from their class. Lily's party would be 2 weeks later, equally elaborate. The morning of Rose's party, Christopher woke to both girls jumping on his bed. It had become their ritual, this morning invasion. He loved it. "Happy birthday, Rose." He grabbed her in a hug. 6 years old. You're practically grown up. "Can I drive now?" Rose asked hopefully. "Not quite yet," Christopher laughed. "Maybe in 10 more years." Martha appeared with breakfast. Birthday pancakes with sprinkles, a tradition she'd started years ago. Lauren had asked if she could help set up the party venue, a gesture that warmed Christopher's heart. His life was coming together in ways he'd never imagined. At the party, watching Rose's face light up as she opened presents and played games with friends, Christopher felt overwhelming gratitude. 6 months ago, he hadn't known these children existed. Now, they were everything. His entire world had shifted and reorganized itself around 2 small girls who'd called him from a dump in the rain. "You look happy," Lauren said, appearing at his side with punch for the adults. "I am. Happier than I've ever been." "That's good. You deserve it." She paused. "The girls are incredible, you know. You and Martha have done an amazing job." "Martha did most of it. I'm still learning." "You're doing better than learning. You're excelling." Lauren squeezed his hand. "And for what it's worth, they clearly adore you. Rose told me yesterday that you're magic because you found them when they were lost, and now everything is perfect." Christopher's throat tightened. "She said that." "She did. She's not wrong either. What you've built here, this family, this life, it's pretty magical." That night, after the party was cleaned up and Rose was asleep surrounded by new toys, Christopher sat in his office going through old documents. He found the letter Marie had written, still in his drawer where he'd placed it months ago. He reread it with new understanding. Marie had asked him to love their daughters, to be the father she couldn't be, to give them everything she couldn't provide. He'd done that. He was still doing it every single day. And somehow, in loving them, he'd found himself, found purpose beyond business, found family where he'd only had emptiness before. "Thank you, Marie," he whispered to the woman he'd known for one night and who had given him the greatest gifts of his life. "I hope you can see them. See how beautiful and bright and loved they are. I hope you know I'm keeping my promise." He folded the letter and placed it back in the drawer. Someday, when the girls were old enough, they'd read their mother's words. They'd understand that she'd loved them even when she couldn't show it, that she'd made impossible choices hoping they'd lead to better outcomes, that in her own broken way, she'd done the best she could. But for now, Christopher's job was simple. Love them, protect them, guide them, and show them every single day that they were wanted, valued, and precious. It was the easiest and most important work of his life. 3 months later, as winter settled over the city, Christopher stood at his office window watching snow fall. His phone buzzed. A text from the girls, sent with Martha's help. "Daddy, come home, it's snowing. We want to build a snowman with you." He smiled, grabbed his coat, and left the office at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. 6 months ago, leaving work early would have been unthinkable. Now it was obvious. His daughters wanted to build a snowman. Everything else could wait. The snow was perfect for packing. Christopher, Martha, Lily, Rose, and Lauren spent 2 hours in the building's rooftop garden, creating an entire snow family. Father Snowman, Grandmother Snowwoman, and 3 little snow children. The girls insisted Lauren be included, a sign that she'd become part of their expanding family. "Best day ever!" Rose declared, her cheeks red from cold. "Best day ever," Lily agreed. Christopher looked around at this impossible family he'd somehow acquired. His daughters, who'd called him from a trash heap and changed his entire world. Martha, who'd raised them through impossible circumstances and now enriched his life daily. Lauren, who'd entered cautiously but was becoming someone important. All of them together, building snow people and laughing in the falling snow. His phone buzzed again. Work email, something marked urgent. He glanced at it, then deliberately put the phone away without reading. Whatever it was could wait. This moment, right here, was what mattered. This was what success looked like. Not money or power or corporate victories, but cold noses and frozen fingers, and daughters laughing as they threw snowballs at their father. "I love you," he called out to the girls, "both of you, so much." "We love you too, Daddy," they shouted back in unison, pelting him with more snowballs. Christopher let them hit him, arms spread wide, face turned up to the falling snow. He was 42 years old, a billionaire CEO, and he was standing in the snow, letting 6-year-olds pelt him with poorly formed snowballs. And he'd never been happier in his entire life. That night, after everyone was in bed and the apartment was quiet, Christopher walked through the rooms of his home. Every space showed evidence of the family living here. Toys in corners, Martha's knitting on the couch, Lauren's book on the coffee table from her last visit, the girls' backpacks by the door ready for school tomorrow. He stopped in their bedroom doorway. Lily and Rose were asleep in their respective beds. They'd decided they wanted their own rooms once they felt secure enough, but had clearly started the night in Rose's bed together before migrating. They were still holding hands across the space between beds, even in sleep, his daughters, his family. His entire world, built from an impossible moment when fate threw him exactly where he needed to be. When 2 lost children trusted a stranger enough to call him Daddy. When the universe conspired to bring together 3 people who needed each other desperately, even though they hadn't known it. Christopher thought about that night in the rain, in the dump, when he'd found 2 small girls using a cabbage leaf as an umbrella. He'd been so angry that day, so convinced his life was falling apart. He'd had no idea he was being guided toward everything he'd been missing. "Thank you," he whispered to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had orchestrated that impossible moment. "Thank you for knowing what I needed before I did. Thank you for 2 brave little girls and a phone that landed exactly where it needed to. Thank you for this family, this life, this second chance." In the silence of the night, with his daughters sleeping peacefully and his entire life transformed, Christopher Ashford finally understood that the best things in life aren't planned or earned or bought. They're discovered in the most unexpected places, at the worst possible moments, when you least expect them but need them most. All it took was a discarded phone, a desperate call, and the courage to answer it.